Hi everyone, I'm Pastor Belec, and once again, welcome to these wonderful sessions of good and faithful servants, which I believe that you are. You wouldn't be watching this, or at least if you are a little challenged in some areas of good and faithful, then I would say you're doing the right thing at the right time with this ministry of the communion. And so listen closely to me today as we welcome you in the name of the Lord. Be assured today that if your calling from the Lord is deep in your heart as a foundation, Paul says, be careful how you build on that foundation. We've been out of Matthew chapter 25, and we've been dealing with that servant master who gave his servants the talents. And so today, in this session, I want to deal with that poor old soul, that poor old pastor who had one talent. He had one or two people to deal with. He had very little responsibility. And yet, watch what happens here. Then he which had received the one talent, that's verse 24, and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art an hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and I went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast what is thine. And the Lord said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful, lazy servant, thou knewest that I reap where I did not sow, and gather where I have not strewed. Thou ought, watch now, here's the counsel. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money into the exchange to the exchangers, and then at my coming I should have received mine own with assury. Take therefore the talent from him, and give it to him which has the 10 talents. For unto everyone that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which is given to him. Verse 25, I want to address that. I was afraid. I was scared. Do you know that there are times in my 55 plus years of ministry, I have gone into churches to preach a revival, and the poor pastor had to be dragged out of the basement of that church, up the stairs, and he was so terrified that he was almost vomiting on his way up the stairs because it was time for him to preach. I have seen, this in absolute live performance, where he wouldn't come. I have seen where certain pastors would be consistently late 15, 30 minutes and 40 minutes for their own church services. It took that much time just to stir up enough courage just to show up to church. And obviously these same people that I'm thinking about right now, in America, Canada, internationally, they're not in ministry anymore. So this man says, I was afraid. I was afraid. You say, Pastor Belec, have there been times when you've been afraid? Absolutely. Absolutely. Has there been times when I felt utterly defeated and a failure? Absolutely. But listen closely. What you do with those sentiments, those feelings, is the pivotal point of you going forward or dropping the ball. Jesus said, if you put your hands to the plow and let go, you're not fit for the kingdom of God. And so watch now, there are times that I've been scared, but then that frightfulness, that sense of uncertainty pushed me to trust him that much the more. But let me point this out to you here. It's very important that you get this. If you're wondering as you look over your ministry and where you are right now with your congregation and all, if you're afraid, if you're scared, say, Lord, what's going to be the future is, it is time for you to seek the Lord in this matter. And watch what he said here. Being afraid is normal, because if you're not working side by side, faith and fear, okay? You get this now, faith and fear. If they're not on parallel tracks, then you're not working. Because when do you need faith the most, if not when you're most afraid? And if you have zero fear, then you become self-sufficient. If nothing challenges you. And yet I will be able to show you all of God's servants from the very beginning who were at some point, many times, many points, afraid. Listen closely. Faith and fear run together on a parallel. In other words, the fear is not that you're afraid to fail, but the fear is, number one, not to offend God. Secondly, it is to remind you that you're human in your faith, and that you're going to have to depend on the sufficiency of the grace of Jesus Christ, and God has made us sufficient ministers of the gospel and to preserve the mystery that God has entrusted to us. So listen closely. Fear and faith work hand in hand. It's normal to have some kind of fear to a certain degree, some kind of apprehension. And so let me read to you a small snippet here. Choose your mentor well. Every leader needs mentors, especially emerging leaders. God took Elisha through the preparation necessary under Elijah. Elisha's preparation was as follows. Number one, he was anointed to replace Elijah. Number two, Elisha touched Elijah's mantle long before he entered his ministry. 3, he burned his farming tools. That's scary. What he knew of certainty, he dropped it all. Number 4, he stuck with Elijah wherever he went. Number 5, he absorbed all that he could from Elijah. Here are some leadership principles. Leaders must understand their call and their role. Leaders must wait patiently on God's perfect timing for their authority. And leaders must surrender former ambitions. Leaders must pursue good mentors. Leaders must hunger to grow and develop. Who is mentoring you? If you say, Pastor, I don't have a mentor, here's your problem. You need a covering. You need a covering. You need a bishop. You need a spiritual father, even if you're a father. Why do you think God gave us grandfathers? Because they've lived long enough to understand the issues of life. They've acquired such experiences that you haven't yet. That's why we have granddads. A bishop is a kind of a grandfather to help the fathers with their children. That's what they're there for. So who's your mentor? Well, always remember this, what I'm about to tell you. You will become like the 5 people that you hang out with the most. If you hang around 5 losers, whiners, complainers, and defeated people, guess what? You're going to be number 6. But if you hang around 5 good, solid men of God who have stood the test of time and trials, been tried through the fire, you'll become number 6. These will become your mentors. And you cannot go beyond your mentors. You have to receive from them. That's why Paul told Timothy, what you've seen in me, what you've heard from me, what you've learned from me, absorb it, take it in, learn, and put it into practice, and then commit it to other faithful men. So, what we're saying today is this. Who is your mentor? Who is the one that's advising you? Who is the one that you can cry on? That shoulder. Who is the shoulder you're crying on? Who is the one that you can say, I'm ready to give up, I've done it, and the one to be able to put Humpty Dumpty back together again? You have to have somebody. And I'm glad to tell you today that that's why the communion of evangelical Christian ministers and churches has been put together by God. And we don't want you to be an island to yourself. It's too scary. That's not God's plan. Although we're not a denomination with a central government, we are there to help you to develop and to grow and to blossom without interference. We're not here to govern your faith, but to rejoice when you and your calling. And so we welcome you to come and be part of our hearts and part of our fellowship. And understand today, it's not a time, right now is no time to bury your calling, to bury your talent, to bury what God has placed in you out of discouragement and disappointment. People will disappoint, but God will never disappoint. So be encouraged in the name of the Lord today. This bishop, this pastor blesses you in the name of the Lord with strength and with courage and with hope in your heart. Remember our motto for these sessions and for the communion for that matter. It says, striving for competence in our Christian walk and witness till Christ be formed in us. Galatians chapter 4 verse 19, Ephesians chapter 4 verse 13. Until the next time, I'm Pastor Belec.